Hi there, welcome. I'm Christine Weber, and this is my weekly live stream. It's nice to have you here. I love to share yoga with folks, and I love to support mature yoga teachers who are getting their wisdom out there into the world. So thanks for being here. Please leave a comment, and I would love to know what else you want me to talk about. So today's topic for my weekly live stream is the purpose of doing yoga. I think it's a really important topic for a number of reasons. So, one of the things that I've been seeing quite a lot in the past maybe 5 years or so has been a shift away from traditional asana, which is totally fine. I'm seeing a lot of people talking about functional movement, which I love. Like, I love functional movement. I've been into that forever. Um, and saying like yoga it's not the best thing for stretching. It doesn't really help you strengthen, might not be good for osteoporosis, maybe gives people all the stuff. And if you've been paying attention out there in the cyber world, cyber yoga world, I'm sure you've seen some of this critique as well. It's really been quite common and it's been escalating over the last few years. And the idea is that many yoga postures cause problems. Function should never be subjugated to form, right? Form is not the most important thing. Function is more important than form. And that there's other ways to move more healthily. So I've actually seen quite a few people who used to be kind of famous yoga teachers kind of moving into the realm of functional movement. And all of that is, I think, in my opinion, all of that is terrific because it's giving people better biomechanical information for the people who want that stuff, you know? And it's giving people better solutions for stretching and better solutions for strengthening their bodies and better ways of moving their bodies and, more evidence-based. Great, right? That's great. So now let's talk about the problem. The problem is starting with the assumption that people do yoga for fitness. That's the biggest problem right there. Is I'm assuming that you're coming to yoga because you want to do a handstand. I'm assuming that that is the best thing for me to teach you in a yoga class is how to do a handstand. I'm assuming that you're coming to yoga because you want to have more flexible hamstrings and that's why you're coming to me for yoga. I'm making that assumption without examining what's behind it. So I'm not examining what the worldview is behind it. I'm not examining what the goal of yoga is. I'm making assumptions about it. For example, I saw recently a famous kind of physical therapist, online yoga teacher. And she teaches a lot of neurology stuff, which is interesting, like, how the brain works and how it connects to your body. Interesting stuff. And so she does these things where it's like, okay, so you're doing a forward bend and your forward bend only can look like that. So if you get up and you do all these like eye drill things or move your body around certain ways, then you can do a forward bend and look more like that. And I don't have, I think if you're going to teach stuff like that, it's great. But I think what you're missing is you're making the assumption that that's why people come to yoga, right? You're making that assumption. So I think it's really important to start with why. Why do yoga? Why? Why did you choose yoga instead of going to a physical therapist movement class or going to Tabata or going to Pilates or whatever? Like, why yoga? And when you get drilled down into that question, then oftentimes the answer is, and you'll see this in evidence, this is evidence-based because you'll see it in the research studies from like Yoga Journal, right? When you drill down and you ask people why they come to yoga, they usually start by saying they come because they want to relax. Their doctor told them they need to have less stress or something. That's a really common reason. And the reason why people stay and continue to do yoga the evidence-based reason, you can find it in the Yoga Journal, Yoga Alliance study, is because of their spirituality, that they find a deeper sense of meaning, a connection to their higher self, a deeper sense of purpose. I want to start with that assumption in how I teach. That's and that's what I teach my students, my teachers, the teachers that I train. Start with the assumption that people are coming from spirituality, and you don't even have to assume it. You can do two things. One, you can look at the evidence base and what the research says. That's why people are coming to yoga. And the second thing you can do is you can ask people, why are you coming to my yoga class? And some people will say they're coming for stretching and like they like the spirituality stuff second. And some people will say, yes, I'm coming because you have taught me how to meditate and I never could do it before. So we don't have to make assumptions. But as yoga teachers, it is very helpful to put your stake in the ground and say, this is why I teach yoga. This is what you will get from my class. And if you want to be the yoga teacher that says, come to my class because I'm going to teach you to do a handstand, great, at least people know. But if you want to be the yoga teacher who's meeting the needs of the people as evidenced in the research, then you're going to be saying, I teach about non-sectarian spirituality and how you can access that for yourself. That puts you in that gives you a clarity and puts you in a very clear category of why you're teaching, and so people can understand why you're teaching and respond to that teaching in a way that that to say, this is the yoga I want, and be okay with not everybody wanting that. I had to get really okay with. I spent a lot of years. I live in a highly yoga-fied town. They just had a yoga festival last weekend. Like, there's yoga everywhere here. And I knew that I was teaching differently from a long time. I've been here for 23 years. I knew a long time ago I was teaching differently. And I had to stick to it. And I had to say, this is what I do. And when I put my stake in the ground and I said, I'm going to teach you yoga postures to help balance you physiologically, to help you create greater autonomic nervous system balance, to help the mind feel more balanced so that you can access those deeper states of connection to your higher self. I started to teach like that. I started to talk like that. I started to tell people this is what I do. And I lost students. And I had to be okay with it. I had to be okay with people being like, I don't like that stuff. I'm going somewhere else. And I just want to stretch my hamstrings. I'm going somewhere else. And when I got to that place where I was okay with not being everything for everyone, that's when I started to have success in my teaching, because I realized it was coming from an authentic, it was coming from who I authentically am and what I want to do, how I want to share yoga. Now, in addition to the evidence base I just talked about in terms of why people come to yoga for stress relief and they stay in yoga because for the spiritual benefits of it, right? So that's what we know from the research. In addition to that, we can go to the tradition and what the tradition says. And I put it in the comments. And if you're on Instagram, I'll put it in the comments afterwards. The tradition says that yoga practice, I should say not yoga practice. The tradition says that the meaning of life, and this is from the Vedic teachings, the meaning of life is to understand yourself and realize yourself and actualize yourself, and to help others do the same thing. Ātmano mokṣārthaṃ jagaddhitāya, right, is the Sanskrit for it. It's from the Rg Veda. Ramakrishna, who is a great mystic of the early 20th century, highly revered teacher in Bengal, adopted that sentiment and that statement for what's now called the Ramakrishna Mission. I've seen it in other organizations have adopted it, other Indian organizations, right? So it is out there. It's some of the most ancient wisdom, that life is about understanding yourself and realizing yourself, and then using that knowledge to help other people and the world, and to serve the world, the jagat, the world. So it's not just about other people, it's about serving the whole world. As so when we go back to that original statement, that old original statement, and we use yoga to affect that, yoga is the process for making that happen, then the meaning of doing yoga becomes much deeper. The purpose of yoga is so much deeper, and coming to our mat is so much more meaningful and so much more powerful, because we're coming with the idea that this is the technology of being human. The technology of being human is showing up for yourself on a regular basis and going inside and exploring. And we can do that with asanas. We can use pranayama to help prepare us, and we can do it with meditation practices. And please don't fall into the trap that meditation means doing nothing or thinking about nothing. That's a very narrow definition of yoga, and it has almost nothing to do with what the yoga tradition says about yoga, which says about meditation, which, by the way, the central practice of the yoga tradition is meditation. My point here is that there is a lot of misunderstanding out there. There's a lot of sort of yoga-ish things going on out there. And that's all fine and good and serving needs. But when you really put the stake in the ground and you say, this is why I come to yoga, this is why I have studied it all these years, this is why I teach it, you're bringing people a much deeper opportunity than softer, more flexible hamstrings. There's nothing wrong with wanting flexible hamstrings, but it's not the same thing as wanting to know who you are and what your purpose is in this world and how you can serve other people. It's an entirely different story. You know, somebody who is in a wheelchair and has tight hamstrings can still do yoga. And so if the goal is only stretching something, you're missing the deeper potential of these practices. So I would offer that as a yoga community, we can do better. You know, we can actually be out front. And it doesn't mean you have to tell people to worship Ganesh. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's about helping people to leverage their innate capacity for tuning into spirituality. In a world where we have lost our traditional religions, which is where we're living right now. It's a post-religious world, not entirely, but many people have let go of religions that weren't in line with their values, or the way that the religion was interpreted wasn't in line with their values, right? Many people have let go of that. In that kind of a world, there's a desperate need for this. Lots of evidence that links spirituality to better health. Lots of evidence that people want something deeper. Why not make that part of what you teach, central to what you teach? Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'd love it if you'd leave a comment. And I hope feel free to leave me some thoughts about what else you'd like to see on my weekly live stream. And I'll see you next week. Lots of love.